How did I get here? What was I doing, and how did I get here? Those were the only two thoughts ringing in my head as we stumbled through the suite, slamming into the wall, the dresser, and the wall again. His hands were everywhere, tracing every curve, every line, like he was trying to memorize me with his fingertips. How did I get here? I was making out with Jordan Wright. Yes, the Jordan Wright. Arguably the most famous country music star in the country. Yet, there it was again. A knock on the door. Faint at first, but persistent. His lips never left mine, fitting together like they were made for this. His body pressed into mine, strong and sure, and for a moment, everything else faded. But then came a louder knock, followed by a woman's voice. "Mr. Wright? Are you in there? I need to update you on the flight status for tomorrow." I pulled back slightly, panting. "Aren't you going to answer that?" He grinned, shaking his head. "Not more important than this. If we're quiet enough, she'll go away." And just like that, his lips were on mine again, and all rational thoughts dissolved. We moved together toward the bedroom, his hands steady on my waist, guiding me down onto the bed. He hovered over me, his eyes dark and hungry, as though he was drinking me in. How did I get here? When he finally pulled back, his breathing was heavy, his lips swollen. He looked me over like I was a masterpiece he couldn't believe was his. "John," he murmured, his voice husky, "you are so hot." I laughed softly, heat rushing to my face. He didn't waste any time. His shirt was unbuttoned and tossed to the side in one smooth motion. "Your turn," he said, a teasing command in his tone. I obliged quickly, and before I could even process what was happening, his lips were on my skin, leaving a trail of heat across my torso. Hickeys marked my neck, my chest, my stomach. He wasn't holding back, and I didn't want him to. We kissed again, deeper this time, the kind of kiss that makes your heart pound and your mind spin. Every part of me was alive, but the blood in my body directed to one central, undeniable focus. I broke the kiss, breathless, and directed him to lie back. For the first time, I got to really look at him. This was Jordan Wright, the man I'd admired from a distance at concerts, seen on high-resolution posters, and heard crooning heartbreak into every microphone in America. And now, he was here, right in front of me. I was so caught up in staring that I didn't notice him chuckling. "You know," he said, his voice laced with amusement, "I do get that reaction a lot, but usually it's from screaming fans on the other side of a barricade. Not, right before sex." I blushed furiously. "Sorry, I've had the biggest crush on you forever, and now you're here, and I want to remember this. All of it." His laugh was rich and deep, sending a shiver through me. "Well, are you done ogling yet? Because I had some plans for tonight, and you're kinda delaying them." I bit my lip, grinning, and he leaned back down to kiss him. How did I get here? Flashback, 5 hours ago. I was probably hallucinating because there was no way I was about to meet Jordan Wright personally. Well, not exactly personally. I won VIP access to a meet and greet with him, along with 3 other people. We got to take pictures with him and talk to him for all of the 30 minutes. I was usually pretty put together, but meeting Jordan was everything to me. His music really helped me in helping me figure out my sexuality, and it helped me through really dark times. But I was never fortunate enough to personally meet him and thank him for everything he had done for me. It was a benefit concert in Chicago for children from displaced countries, which meant I got to meet my favorite artists and help people in need, so it was well worth it. Winning the VIP pass was just pure luck for me. So there I was, toying with the VIP section pass, unable to sit still, pacing all over the little private room for the meet and greet. My hands were sweaty, and my heart was beating so fast, and then he walked in, with the brightest smile on his face, his guitar slung behind his back. He took a seat in front of the room and invited the winners to come sit with them. After a few deep breaths, I finally found my legs and walked up to sit in the chair right in front of him. His eyes lingered on me as I took my seat, and then he began the meet and greet. The other winners beside me bombarded him with questions, which he answered enthusiastically, but I sat there, my eyes glued to my VIP pass, twirling it with my hands. It wasn't hard, but Jordan must have noticed my silence and directly spoke to me. "Interesting design," he said, motioning to my hat. I gave a tight-lipped smile. Thanks, I made it." His brow shot up in surprise. "They're impressive. I've been looking for unique cowboy hat designs lately. The traditional are good, but I always wanted something that would represent my style. Do you make them commercially?" I nodded. "Well, yes, I'm an accessories designer." He hummed. "That's really impressive. I should hire you to make my hats. In fact," he motioned to the woman standing at the door holding a clipboard. "Megan, once this is over, get his info. I want to see his stuff more." The woman nodded and noted it down. "Now that I've gotten you to speak, maybe let's not waste the next couple of minutes, and let's all talk." A blush crept up my cheek and I nodded. We circled back to the previous conversation, and I finally got the confidence to actually say what I wanted to say to him. He asked us what our favorite songs of his were. Everyone had such solid choices, but when it got to my turn, I mentioned a song from his very first album. The surprised look returned to his face again as he leaned his arms on the table and inquired why it was. "I always knew there was something different about me, and your song was instrumental in confirming it. And when I finally came to terms with it, it helped me deal with the aftermath of all that. I lost a lot of friends, and my family wasn't very keen on accepting that part of me. But I knew it then. It was who I was. I was gay. There was no changing that fact, and that song, plus many others, is really instrumental in helping me navigate that whole scenario." I paused, and a thought that made me smile came to mind. That and the fact that I made out with a boy for the first time to that song. So it's pretty memorable. That last part sent a laugh around the table. Jordan smiled at me, placing a hand over mine. "I'm honored to have been part of your story, and I'm proud that you came out on top." His hands lingered on mine for longer than I thought it would, which made my insides churn. The last few minutes of the meet and greet were fun. Jordan even asked us to give him feedback on his latest album and to tell things we wish we could hear more from him. I must have been seeing things, but I could have sworn I saw Jordan glancing at me ever so often. But then again, the mind can be delusional. Yet it happened many times in the last 10 minutes, and I couldn't have been that crazy. As if to confirm it, on his way out the door, he spared me one last glance and a smile directly at me. So I know I was definitely not crazy. His smile was so bright, my heart skipped a beat. 20 minutes later. Afterwards, we moved on to the concert itself. The VIP pass included front row tickets to the show, so we were literally placed at the barricade in Jordan's line of sight. I had been to a few concerts on my own, but I had to say, I didn't have as much fun as I did in that concert. Obviously, he performed my favorite songs, but then again, I couldn't name a song of his that wasn't a favorite. He paraded along the edge of the stage very often, shaking hands with all the fans he could. But then he would also stare at me when he sang certain lyrics of his song, and make some heart gestures like he was talking directly to me. No one would blame me for thinking I had made an impression on him, big enough for him to seek me out in a concert and sing directly to me. But it was so mind-boggling that I couldn't even believe it was true. Yet it kept happening, and he kept staring and smiling and gesturing and acknowledging me throughout the entire concert. 2.5 hours later, the concert was over. I was in the parking lot trying and failing to order an Uber back home when my phone rang. It was an unknown number, which bothered me, but I answered anyway, hoping it'd be one of the Uber drivers finally putting me out of my misery. A man's voice was on the other line. "Hey, John?" Excuse me, who is this?" I asked cautiously. "It's Jordan. Remember I asked for your info after the meet and greet?" the voice replied. "Oh, shit! Jordan Wright was calling me, directly on my cell phone." I had to be hallucinating. "Hi, Jordan. The concert just ended. Is there anything I can do for you?" I tried to sound casual, but my nerves were going crazy. "Yeah, actually. I was wondering if you were still in the vicinity. I'd like to talk to you some more." Holy shit. Yeah, I'm in the parking lot, and I've been trying to get an Uber, but no luck so far." "Great. Text me your exact location. Stay right there." He hung up. I texted him the precise location and stood waiting. Why I stood waiting, I didn't know. Yes, he's famous, but what if he's going to kill me? It's the middle of the night. I live alone, and I don't have any major commitments for a long time. No one's going to miss me. My thoughts were interrupted when a black car pulled up in front of me and honked. The window rolled down, revealing Jordan, in much more casual clothing, his usual cowboy hat on his head. He beamed at me and motioned for me to get in. After a moment of pretending to weigh the pros and cons, I opened the car door and sat next to him. The window rolled back up and the car moved. "Where are we going?" I asked, strapping in. "Back to my hotel. We can't have this meeting backstage. Plus, I assume it's going to be pretty long." And long it was. There was some small talk in the car until we got to the hotel, where we were taken up to his suite. He inquired more about my design business, and I showed him my designs on my Instagram. Somewhere in there, he managed to input several compliments and mention how much I impressed him. Then he confessed that, while he did want to know more about my business, he invited me over because he wanted to talk to me in private. The confusion was evident on my face until he leaned in and kissed me. He pulled away to let me get over my initial shock and apologized for jumping to conclusions and kissing me without permission. But I was only focused on the fact that he had kissed me and that I wanted to do it again. So I did. The next morning, I stared down at the sight of utter gorgeousness as his chest rose and fell with his light breathing. He looked so relaxed. Granted, I had only ever seen him from far distances, and I wasn't familiar enough with him to have known his morning face, but he still looked effortlessly beautiful. I had been observing him for over 20-ish minutes. Creepy? Maybe, but there was no one there to tell me different. Then he stirred, and I reluctantly pulled my attention away from him. He groaned and stretched, then his voice rang through the empty room. "You're really bad at pretending, you know? How did you—" My face burned from being caught staring. "I'm not that deep of a sleeper, John," he answered, amusement clear in his voice. He sat up and moved to hover over me. "Good morning." He planted a soft kiss on my lips and finally sat up, stretching his arms. I glanced at him through the corner of my eyes and watched as his muscles contracted through the motions. He was literally gorgeous. "Last night was very fun," he stated, "but I do believe I owe you some form of an explanation." I turned to look at him and nodded. "Well, as much as I do have a crush on you, just like 70% of your fans, I never thought you'd be—" "Well, what exactly are you?" He chuckled. "Valid question. I'm gay too. I don't believe I've done much to make people think otherwise. I'm just not willing to confirm or deny anything. I like my private life private." He had very valid reasons, but I wondered if they were the actual reasons. It was none of my business, though. This was just a one-time thing, and I'd probably never see him again, let alone speak of this again. "Okay, Jordan, I understand you. And you're right, it is no one's business who you sleep with." He held my gaze for a while, and my heart started beating again. So I cleared my throat and got off the bed. "So, you must have a lot on your schedule today, so I'll be getting out of your hair now." I picked my pants and shirt off the floor and disappeared into the bathroom to get dressed. Now alone, I splashed water on my face, resting my hands on the sink. The memories of last night flooded my brain like a burst pipe, and my face burned at the thought of everything. I couldn't just let myself dwell on it too much like he was still on the other side of the door. I washed my face and got dressed. There was a knock on the door, then Jordan opened it. "Hey, so I was thinking, and would you be interested in coming on tour with me?" "What? How would that even work?" I asked with a puzzled look. "Well, I assume that you work remotely from home and make all your designs yourself, so it could be possible that I could hire you to be my tour designer, at least for my accessories. Anything you need to work with, we can get it for you, and we could use the time to get to know each other. And no one would suspect a thing." His voice sounded serious, but I couldn't really tell. "I'm sorry, I'm just finding it very hard to understand why you want me to come with you." He sighed. "Because I like you, John. You're a really interesting person, and I'd like to get to know you some more. And being the busy person that I am, this might be the only option I have. You can say no, and I'll completely understand, but I do hope you'll say yes." I was shocked, to say the least. Jordan Wright just asked me to accompany him on tour and work with him and get to know him. How does a person respond to this? It's certainly not by keeping a shocked face with your mouth hanging open and not saying anything. But I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know what to say, or if I even wanted to go with him. We only met the night before, and I wasn't the kind of person to do things impulsively. But then again, it would be a dream come true to work with him and grow my brand, and in addition, act as Jordan's +1 on his entire tour run. The pros outweighed the cons, but I was still skeptical, so I pivoted and asked him when he had to leave. It was at noon that day, which gave me the perfect excuse. "Oh, I'll never be able to pack so quickly," he countered. "That's okay, we can just get you new clothes and anything else you need." Blasted rich people! That was the only excuse I had! Shackled with no other reason to turn him down, I accepted and bought myself a little time to go home and pack up my essentials and get my sketchbook. Before I knew it, we were on a plane and heading to the first stop on the first leg of his tour in Latin America. 3 weeks later. Over the next few weeks, Jordan and I had been going on dates whenever we had the downtime, and believe it when I tell you, he made the time to go out on those dates with me. When we weren't whining and dining or disappearing under the sheets, he was giving his heart and soul to the sold-out concert after sold-out concert, doing interview after interview, brand promos and photo shoots, and I was the luckiest person in the world to be given the honor to design, create, and style his accessories for each schedule. My business even got a massive surge in followings and orders, so my entire stock got sold out within weeks. I too was extra busy and extra occupied, but that didn't stop either of us from having time for each other. He had been writing a lot more songs lately, and anytime he had, he'd take me with him to the studio, and he'd be writing or recording a new song. Over the Latin American leg of the tour and into the European leg of the tour, we had so many conversations, and I got to know some of the most intimate details of each other's lives. He opened up to me about his family's struggles and how music was the only way he could escape the harshness of reality. He opened up to me about how lucky he was that the music was the ticket out of that low place his family was stuck in. They were hard workers, but things just didn't seem to click for them until it did. He spoke about his struggles with his music during the first 2 years of being signed. The deadlines weren't helping his artistic flow, and the label was hurriedly releasing everything he made. It stressed him out so badly he couldn't make a single good song for almost 6 months, and he considered quitting. We also touched base on the highs of his career, every good thing that happened, both in public and in private, and it felt very comfortable. We were each other's confidants, and we really cared about each other. Even when we made love, it wasn't on a casual level. It went deeper than that, and we truly connected. Every now and then, I had the thought to gently urge him to come out so we could be that way in public. I had no problems with the way we were, but it just felt odd that there were so many assumptions about who he was, and I thought it wouldn't bother anyone, so I suggested, but it never went past that. 6 months later. We'd been together for about 6 months, and the tour had one more leg left, the North American leg. We had finally circled back to where we began. I hadn't been away from my apartment that long before, so when we touched down in Chicago, I made a beeline to go home for a bit. Jordan had some downtime as well, and only had to do a few press events before the tour continued the next week, so there were no objections to my choice of location. 2 days later. We were at a studio downtown where he had an interview. The same old recycled questions, and I prepared to internally facepalm in his generic answers. The bit about relationships came up and he hesitated, which made me a little nervous. He chuckled nervously and announced that he was in fact in a relationship. The announcement came as a shock to me because we had not discussed coming out as a couple together recently. Then he mentioned the name Allison Blake, and I felt my heart shatter. Allison was a musician as well, signed to his label. I'd seen them interact with each other a few times, but it seemed nothing but friendly. Now here he was, announcing her as his girlfriend after the months we had spent together. I couldn't see my face, but I'm sure it expressed how betrayed I felt. I didn't even want to think of how this was possible. I just knew that he lied to me and kept this a secret, and I must have wasted the last 6 months of my life on him. I hurried out of the studio quickly and took a cab straight to my apartment. Once inside, all the emotions came pouring out. I'd never felt as lost as I did. Someone I trusted with my heart for half a year and been vulnerable with, and been nothing but patient with, kept a secret like this from me. I dissolved into tears, and my mind started racing, trying to think about any reason why this would be happening. He couldn't be in a relationship with a woman. He never mentioned being bisexual. But what if he started having feelings and it just happened? Why couldn't he at least tell me? I went through all the possible scenarios in my head there on my living room floor and was so far gone I didn't even notice it was dark until the doorbell brought me back to my senses. I opened the door and he stood in front of me, sunglasses and a baseball cap. He took off the glasses. "Please, John." After letting him in, he took off the disguise and took a good look at me. My bloodshot eyes and demeanor must have given away what I had been doing for the past few hours. He stepped toward me. "John, I am so sorry about all this. I didn't know how best to tell you without hurting your feelings." I looked up at him, the pain evident in my eyes. "So, you let me find out about your girlfriend over an interview, Jordan? What the hell?" "I know you must be really pissed off at me right now, but please let me explain." I crossed my arms and stared at him, waiting for this explanation of his. He sat on the arm of my couch. "I approached the label the day we came back with the intention of telling them about you and my intention to go public with you. But before I could get a word out, they said they had this publicity idea that would help grow my fan base. I was obliged to listen, so they proposed that I agree to a staged relationship with Allison to merge our fan bases and increase our impact. They said it would be believable because we already had a couple of songs out together and were good friends." He took in a deep breath. "I mentioned already being in a relationship with you, and they said it just wasn't time to come out with that news because it would sacrifice my growth. But they had no problem with it if I could keep it on the down low. I couldn't argue with their logic because it wouldn't yield anything, but I should have told you before now. I am so sorry, John. Please." "So you couldn't argue with their logic, but you're fine with parading me around like some secret affair? You know how shitty that sounds, right, Jordan? You know, I always knew that thing you told me when we met about wanting to keep your privacy was a load of bullshit. Are you ashamed of who you are? Are you ashamed of me? Which is it?" I asked. "Neither, John. I just never thought it would come to this." He reached out to me. I nodded, taking a step back. "Yes, Jordan, me neither. And I'm a fool for letting it get this far without knowing you had no intention of being with me like a normal person. I can't believe I fell in love with you, and I'm still going to love you after this shit. But I can love you and know that I deserve better." He closed the distance between us and grabbed my hand. "No, John, please, I don't want to lose you. I'll do anything, please." I sighed and blinked away the tears that threatened to fall, looking him right in the eyes. "Jordan, I love you. I do. I haven't loved someone in a really long time, but I know I do love you. But I can't do this. It was fine when we were traveling and having fun, but now you're supposed to be in a relationship with another person while being with me. I'm a patient guy, but I don't know how to handle that. And it's fine, really. I don't want you to have to do this, but I don't see any other options. It's either me or her, but it can't be both. I'm sorry, Jordan. And I don't want you to have to give up your career, so I'm just going to step back so you don't have to make that choice. You have a bright future ahead of you, and I don't want to be the one that takes that away. John, please. I just need you to give me some time and I'll figure this out," he pleaded, staring into my eyes, trying to search for an answer that could contradict what I was saying. "Just go, Jordan, please." He let go of me and put his disguise back on. Walking out the door, he whispered, "I love you too, John," just loud enough for me to hear. 1 month later. After Jordan left my apartment that day, I fell into somewhat of a slump. For the next month, I became a couch potato, only ate junk food and cried myself to sleep. It wasn't easy going through a breakup without someone to lean on, but that was my life, and I was determined to ride it out and get back to my productive ways. It wasn't easy, however, because every 3 channels on TV, there was some news or the other about Jordan, pertaining to either his tour or his relationship. They took the word staged very seriously and were the most picturesque couple as far as the eye could tell. I switched my Netflix binge, and even then I couldn't escape Jordan. His tour documentary was all over Netflix, and it became nauseating to look at a screen altogether. I was stuck with my thoughts that always drifted back to my time with Jordan. He was plastered all over my life, and there was nothing I could do about it. I could have gone out, but I wasn't feeling up to socializing. That would be obvious with the plethora of missed calls from friends who try to cheer me up. I love them, but I didn't want to be the one to ruin their perfectly good night out with my brooding. So instead, I forced myself to get back to work. I poured myself into my designs and creations, gave myself a blister of 500, and worked harder than I ever did since I embarked on this misadventure. It had been over a month, and I had started to feel better. Work was good, sales were good, and I was in a much better place in my life since Jordan. I only thought about him 5 times a day, as opposed to 5 times an hour. I was lounging on my sofa, flipping through the TV, when I landed on a late-night show with musical guest Jordan Wright. I let it play because, well, he was still one of my favorite artists, and I loved his music. The night was going smoothly until Jordan made an announcement right after his performance. He came out and came clean about his relationship with me. He didn't name any names, but he mentioned screwing up our relationship because he was chasing less important things. He looked right into the camera and directly apologized to me for everything he put me through. Then he walked off the set and the screen went black. I stared at the blank screen and was completely dumbfounded. How did this happen? Did he miss me? Had he been miserable all this time without me? The doorbell rang and tore me out of my thoughts. I opened it and Jordan stood in front of me, in a baseball cap and sunglasses. I let him in and my eyes shuffled between him and the TV. It was a pre-recorded segment. I was waiting for it to be over before I came over. I didn't know what to say and just stared at him. Here's the deal. Your ultimatum? It shouldn't have taken me so long to make a choice. I choose you, John. I never should have thought there was another choice to make but you. I love you. You're everything to me. And I've been going out of my mind for the last month, every night in a different city, but you weren't there and it made no sense. I love you and I need you, John. And I'm so sorry that I put you through all this. I never should have done that. I'm so sorry. I walked up to him. Hey, I love you too, Jordan. I love you too. His eyes softened, full of relief as he kissed me, and I knew that we were going to be okay. Jordan squeezed my hand. He was nervous, I could tell. We were at an award show, and he was nominated for Album of the Year. I lifted his hand and kissed the back of it. His category was coming up soon, so the cameras started panning towards us. I held his gaze for a moment, silently calming him down. It had been 2 years since the whole coming out fiasco, and the media reception was generally great. Who would have thought that the public would love a gay cowboy? The label executives threw a fit when Jordan broke the news on live TV, but they were silenced when his stats rose almost within a week. For them, it was just about what could sell, and as shallow as that seemed, it meant we could be together and happy, so we couldn't complain. They called his name among the nominees, and he smiled at the camera. Then they called his name as the winner, and his smile brightened. He kissed me before going up to accept the award. As he gave his speech, I smiled at him, recounting the events that led us here. That one-night stand all those years ago, and now I was in love with the greatest man I knew. What more could I ask for? The end. Have you ever had to choose between 2 very important people or things? How did you go about it? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.